Boys and girls, this is the Undisputed Era. Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, Roderick Strong, and you're listening to Going In Raw, baby.
Hey guys, this is Charlotte, and you're watching Going In Raw. Going In Raw. That sounds terrible.
What's up? It's your girl, Sasha Banks, the Legit Boss, and you are watching Going In Raw. You like that?
Hey, friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
And welcome back to Going In Raw, the only pro wrestling podcast you need to be listening to right here at youtube.com/Stephen Larson. Also available on Patreon at patreon.com/Stephen Larson. We have all sorts of reward tiers over there, including bonus episodes. Man, what a great schedule of bonus episodes.
Oh, man, off
I'm
the charts.
looking at that we haven't put up yet. Let's see here. We did a tape trade this week, some UFC 2 gameplay with Cain Velasquez.
Yeah, taking on Roy Nelson.
Roy Nelson. That was a good one. Some 2K20 My Career and Ask Stephen Larson. And then an overrun. We're talking about something there. We're actually filming this on Monday.
We're trying more or less get a week's worth of content done in 2 days.
Yeah, pretty much. So hopefully you guys enjoyed your Thanksgiving holiday.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully you were safe on Black Friday.
In theory, this is supposed to go up Sunday.
Yeah, and hopefully you enjoyed 10 for the win. It's back, baby.
Yeah.
So check that out. That was a lot of fun. More of those to come. So, yeah, it's Monday. It's actually the Monday after Survivor Series. So we both stayed up late last night, later than even after Survivor Series.
Well,
and after our recap.
I actually watched the second half of this morning.
Okay. I plunked down on my couch last night. I bundled up. Oh, man, it was nice. And what a terrific – so we figured we'd review the Broken Skull sessions.
Yeah.
I was pretty shocked. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff, but I guess sort of off the top of my head, I can start with what stood out most to me was just how vulnerable and human the Undertaker, Mark Calloway, allowed himself to open up to.
Which we've never really seen before.
Which we've never seen.
Especially in an official – well, apart from those shoot interviews he's done with that pastor of his. Yeah,
but he seemed the set, I think just the circumstances, he can't, because I watched a lot of the stuff with the pastor, and this came off as even more relaxed than that did. I was pretty shocked at just how, all the character was completely off.
All the pretense of kayfabe gone.
Yeah, completely
They
gone.
didn't try to hide behind kayfabe whatsoever. If anything, they pulled the curtain. What I found most interesting about it is that WWE has always been, and they're getting better about it, hesitant to pull the curtain back on what really happens backstage in terms of process.
Yeah.
In fact, it seems at times they're resentful of those who inquire about process, whether it's from management, some of the talents, some of the announcers even.
Corey.
They seem resentful when fans of the product want to learn a bit more about the magic of how certain characters, certain matches come to be.
And I always think that, not to cut you off, I always think that resentment sort of stems from them trying to grasp onto kayfabe a little too long, a little too hard. And that, because I understand the flip side of it. Fans can often be a bit pushy and maybe come off as a bit entitled, but I think a lot of that just stems from the good-natured it comes from a good-natured desire to know more about the products they love.
It's from I think a standpoint of curiosity.
Yeah, sure.
Where fans want to learn more. I mean, it's like here's an analogy. Like let's say DVD directed commentary was never a thing.
Yeah.
And there's fans that want to know, wow, Paul Thomas Anderson, I really want to know how you put together Boogie Nights, and he's like, no. And then talks crap about the fans of the movie. Right. I mean, that's kind of the analogy.
Yeah.
I mean, like in basically any other entertainment field, there's been some platform for people in that field to talk about their creative process, except put RF video aside, from an official WWE capacity, there's never been an outlet consistently where people can go on and talk process. Now, even on the initial Stone Cold podcast, they brought the curtain down a little bit.
They danced around a lot. Around a bit.
I mean, like the Ambrose one, he talked about his frustrations working with Brock. But it just feels like I think part of it is the curtain. I don't feel like it's ever come down nearly to this extent. Plus, you have the Undertaker doing his first official interview not in character.
Yeah.
And that compounded the idea of like, oh, all right, they're not adhering to kayfabe whatsoever. They're tearing the curtain down. They're telling us about the process of not
for an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah, not only
also.
how he got into the wrestling business, the process of how the character of The Undertaker was born, the process by which he developed the character not just from an on-camera presentation, but a wrestling standpoint, mindset transitioning from Undertaker to American Badass and then back again.
Now, I agree. Like, even Stone Cold said this. This could be a 10-part series, each one being 2 hours. However, that being said, within the span of this hour and 40 minute, I thought that Stone Cold, who's, by the way, turning into a terrific interviewer, I feel like he covered the most important bits. I mean, there is all sorts of other stories that they probably could have gone over, but I feel like within the span of time, he covered all the important bits. The stuff that I was hooked the entire time. I was just hooked, and I didn't want it to stop. And
it hit the beats you wanted to hit.
Yeah,
how he got
it did.
started, how The Undertaker was born. They touched on a couple things between that and American Badass, why he made that decision, and then pretty much brought it to, in broad terms, why haven't you retired yet? Essentially.
Yeah, that was really, and they spent a long time. He spent a long time talking about his career and the stage it's been at since Mania's 25 and 26. Because
well, even 27 and 28, the
well,
last
from
two matches.
25 and 26 and on,
Yeah.
like since that time, he talked extensively about that, how he felt that was in. I think we all agreed that was a 4-year program going from 26 to 28. He talked about 30 with Brock, and that was fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
That was really interesting.
I mean,
stuff.
because he brings up the concussion during that match, and we'd always assumed that we've seen that spot where they're ringside and Brock catches a kick from Undertaker and then dumps him on his back. I think we all just kind of assume, oh, it's probably when he was concussed. And Undertaker's like, I didn't know when it happened.
Even he doesn't know. He says he watched it 15 times.
Doesn't know.
And even he doesn't know when it was.
And it was pretty interesting because he says, like, physically he was in shape, like cardio, lifting weights and stuff, but that's not to say his body was ready for a match.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. He compares it to his training now to. We're just going to skip around because it just seems that's kind of what we do. He compared to getting ready for these fight camp, yeah, where you train, and as he put it, you hope to get to your peak right when your fight's happening.
Yeah, it's not just so that was I had heard that a while ago, and when he mentioned it, it brought it back. How it's a very specific thing they do to time their body to be prepared so that you're peaking for the match itself, which is a fascinating. Scientifically speaking, it's really interesting to me.
Sports science and such.
And so that's what the goal was. And he said that his body wasn't prepared. It was timed. The timing was off.
Yeah, because he mentioned that sometimes before he's going into a match and his body feels great and he feels ready. And there's other times where it's not, and he's not. He brings up the match against Roman Reigns, saying that he was hurting during that match, which is plainly evident watching said match.
Yeah.
That his body was not in peak physical performance. He talked about the Goldberg match. Essentially, that he didn't blame Bill for that. He said it's just one of those things that happened.
It's a bad day at the office.
Yeah. But so that's not how he wanted his career to go out. It's not how he wanted his last match to be remembered. So like a matter of a month and a half later, he had that tag match at Extreme Rules, and it was great.
Yeah. Some of the funnier bits. So like who's it? 411 Mania. They put up like a very extensive beat by beat. So I'm just gonna go through this like a little bit and remember some of the funnier bits, like the very beginning when he talks about Buzz Sawyer.
Training with Buzz Sawyer. So
he came to the door naked.
Stone Cold asked him how you got interested in business. They both grew up in South Texas, and so is Paul Bosch. It's Houston promotion.
Yeah.
And I guess Taker was saying that he was playing, I guess, some college ball. Decided he wanted to try to get into the business. Ran into Buzz at a gym or something, and he was like, "Yeah, $2,500. I'll knock $500 for every person you bring with you into the school." $2,500 seemed like a lot for mid '80s wrestling training.
That's a lot.
But Stone Cold didn't bat an eye when he said that
didn't.
number, so maybe
No.
that was common back in the day.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I feel like that's how much some places charge today.
I don't know. But then again, that's not exactly something I'm too educated on.
I do appreciate how they referred to Buzz as like, a top worker. But what did he say? He fell short as a human being.
Yeah. He said, he was a great worker, but fell well short of that as a human being.
Fell a little short as a human being.
And then he told the story of when he and like 8 other guys came up, knocked on Buzz's door. He's standing there, answers it finally, naked. Wonder why these guys are here. He apparently completely forgetting that he was supposed to be training some students. And the best part of that is at no point did Buzz Sawyer ever train the Undertaker in actual ring.
Yeah.
Said he was stretching him out in the front yard and in the driveway of his house.
I'm assuming at that point he put clothes on. But
maybe not.
Yeah, he was standing there butt naked. All I thought to do was shake his hand, and he didn't even have a strong handshake. He limp fisted me.
Yeah. And Stone Cold laughed at the whole thing. And so, like,
I love when they started doing shots, and you have that like post shot. Everybody has post shot face when you're like, and your eyes water up a little bit.
Yeah. Although, given the Taker's reputation as a partier,
that Cypress Hill story was funny too.
That was funny. We'll get to that later. Anyways, so he like a lot of wrestlers, they tell the story. They'll start training, and they'll be amongst a class of students. Week by week, people drop out.
Yeah.
And Taker would tell them that same story, saying week in, week out, Buzz would just have the guys come over and just stretch him. He said maybe he learned to lock up, maybe he learned how to work an arm. That was it.
Yeah.
And then one day he goes knock on Buzz's door and no answer. He had moved to different territory.
Yeah.
And so Taker said he left behind a couple of Rottweilers, took the dogs.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then he went from there straight to Memphis, it sounded like.
Yeah, that's what it. Yeah, that's
so
what
it's a lot
said.
of on-the-job training. One thing I found really interesting about this, and I'm not that familiar with his work. I've seen like one of his matches in USWA.
Yeah.
Not seen a lot of his work in WCW. Talking about his style back in those days. Of course, he played college basketball, I believe, a highly athletic dude. We saw that in fits and spurts in his WB run. But can you imagine a guy of his obvious athletic? It's like he was Dominik Dijakovic 30 years before.
Yeah, I know.
You know, a big guy who could wrestle a highly athletic style was exactly the norm. And you know, he went on extensively about how, as much as he really wanted to wrestle that exciting, fast-paced style and put on incredible matches with guys like Shawn Michaels wrestling that style, that it didn't fit the character of the Undertaker, and he had to scale it back a lot and slow it down. So when he did do something incredibly athletic, it stood out, which makes tons of sense.
Yeah, totally
from
does,
a character standpoint. And so one thing going through that period, he tells a great Dan Spivey story about how Dan was a tough guy when he was brought in to replace Sid as a member of the Skyscrapers.
Yeah, so basically, like that was they're in a match, they're in a tag match with Road Warriors, and Spivey starts going to town on one of them with like it wasn't like a steel chair,
yeah.
And he was like really taking it to him. And of course, Road Warriors have always been known to be tough guys, and stiff workers. And Taker was sitting there watching this, and he was thinking to himself, okay, we're gonna get into a fight. This is gonna happen.
Before the match, apparently Spivey just turned to Taker and goes, "Follow my lead."
Yeah.
Nothing more. And this is Taker was saying, "I'm still pretty green." You know, he wasn't in USWA very long.
Yeah.
And he's like, "All right."
Yeah.
And so we stand there watching Spivey go to town on the Road Warriors and thinking, I don't know what to do, but I know we're gonna get in a fight when we go backstage.
So like the match ends, they get backstage, they do the finish, match ends, they go backstage, and Taker is describing, and it's great because Taker seems to have. It's so funny. What's great about it is that for a guy, it's funny when Eddie Salgado went to go see him and he's wearing the Taker shirt. According to him, Undertaker said, "Did I ever say that? I'll put you down like a dog thing."
Yeah.
And he said, "I don't know, did you?" And he says, "I've been hit with a chair. I've been hit with a chair so many times in the head. I forgot what happened yesterday," or something like that.
Yeah.
He has a very good memory.
Yeah,
He's got some core memories from very specific things because he can remember. And when somebody starts describing something, you sort of understand just how powerful the memory is because we all have those core memories that we can remember exactly what's going on in our heads. And he can remember sitting there like in the locker room and he's sort of on the edge of the chair and he's preparing himself for a fight because he thinks that's coming. And then he can hear the Legion of Doom coming up, Road Warriors coming up the steps. And they come in, and he's just waiting for somebody to say something. And all they say to Spivey is, "Oh, man, thanks so much. That was some great heat out there."
Yeah. And then Dan turns to the Undertaker and just winks at him.
And then my favorite part of that entire thing was, you know, then we ended up driving home. And when I dropped him off, he looks at me and says, hey, that's it for me, man.
I'm done.
I'm done. And like that's something out of a movie.
Yeah, I know.
That's something out of a movie. It's like, what are you talking about? Yeah, I'm done. I think I'm over this. And then that was it. Then Taker was a solo guy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's so weird how things were. So many things were done by the seat of their pants back then.
Yeah.
There's a couple good stories about Taker's time in Memphis. I guess Austin was there as well. Talked about some matches they had against one another when Austin was even newer to the business than Undertaker was.
Yeah, there was some miscommunications there thanks to Austin's
hearing issues. Yeah.
But no, you're talking earlier about them dropping the curtain. And the fact that Austin was talking about things like calling matches, how Taker would go, sa, 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 sa.
They call a spot, yeah.
Hips, whatever. He would call spots in between his,
Yeah.
It was just very interesting to hear them talk about process.
Yeah, that's always fascinating hearing. I guess Undertaker was a veteran in relative terms to Austin at the time. He was the one calling the match.
I don't remember ever having heard the story that he told about WCW saying that they couldn't see him drawing a dime.
I don't recall that either.
Ole specifically. I'd never heard if Ole had ever said anything about that, about why. I mean, it's kind of like, when, who was it? EMI, what was it? I think EMI said no to the Beatles, something like that. One of the major labels back then said no to the Beatles. It's like WCW, Ole Anderson says, we don't ever see anybody
paying to see you wrestle.
And that was a big hit to him. And so he was like, well.
And it wasn't just that he was told that and therefore kind of, he had to leave.
He was going in there for a raise.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was
but also later on, when they kind of didn't talk about it directly, when, we'd heard that WCW had courted The Undertaker during the Monday Night Wars. Undertaker's like, I wasn't going to go there. I remember what they said to me.
Yeah.
Back in 89, 90.
Yeah.
That no one ever, and he said, I understand the regime is completely different now.
Yeah.
Nonetheless.
Yeah.
This is a place that gave me a chance to succeed.
Yeah.
And if this ship was going down, I was going down with it.
He spoke very highly about. He seems just like a very loyal guy because he said, what did he say? He said one of their payouts would have been as much as a year of my salary in WWF, what they were paying in WCW.
Oh yeah, during the Monday Night Wars.
Yeah, and but he and the other thing was funny is that he understood from when WCW started doing really well in the Monday Night Wars. He understood that it was largely because WWF was putting out crap. And they were still trying to cater to kids and not change it up, not change their product. That was pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, that was pretty cool stuff. So his departure from WCW, he goes to a meeting at Turner Tower, where they call it. It's Ole, it's Jim Herd, and then somebody else. Yeah. And that's when they tell him, hey, we don't see anybody ever paying to see you wrestle. And he was like, all right, I'm out of here. And Heyman was his manager in WCW at the time, and Heyman was kind of acting as an intermediary to get him a meeting at WWF.
Yeah.
I know prior, according to the Heyman documentary at least, Heyman used to do some photography work in New York for wrestling shows. So one would assume he was
when
familiar.
He was like 16. When
he was
young.
familiar with probably still some people in WWF.
Oh yeah.
And then Taker tells a story about that, how the night prior, Heyman takes him out to a club, China Club. He gets some. He wasn't wearing his. Or he said back then the uniform for wrestler was Zubaz pants, and a tank top, and he had to get some nice pants, some nice clothes, go to the club, gets in Heyman's car, rips the butt out of the pants.
Yeah.
And so he's trying to hide that his butt's hanging out of his pants the whole time.
So the meeting with Vince was interesting. There was something interesting about his coming into the WWF, is that he was very cognizant, and in fact, relaying this story in itself is very interesting because there are two very specific things where Taker was very scared about how he would be handled as a character. There's the one that everybody has seen on the commercial, and hopefully you guys have watched this in advance of us filming this or whatever, watching it. But there's the Eggman thing, which you guys have all seen. But then there's also when he had this meeting with Vince asked if he has any hidden talents. And Undertaker let it slip that he sings in the shower. And he's like, I no-sold my internal reaction. I just kept a straight face. But he said on the inside, I immediately hated that I said that because then I'm going to turn into like a singing guy.
He said shower boy.
Shower.
That's going to be my gimmick.
Yeah, shower boy and Eggman.
Because he was aware, like in WCW, he was out wrestling in tights.
Yeah.
There wasn't, with him there wasn't this over-the-top gimmick.
Yeah, it was just mean Mark Callis.
Yeah, and he'd seen on WWE TV they had that huge egg they were promoting forever and ever and ever in advance of the first Survivor Series. Of course, we all know what that ended up being, but his worry is like, oh, I'm going to come out there and be Eggman. That's going to be for me. It's going to be for me.
But then something even kind of worse happened, and that was they didn't have anything for him.
Yeah, that's what Vince said. They have a meeting, which is weird. You have a meeting at Vince's house. They go through the trouble of bringing you up to New York, having that meeting, or Connecticut, sorry. And then, you assume talk for half hour, maybe an hour.
Yeah.
Only at the end of it, say Vince says, sorry, we don't have anything for you.
Yeah. And they didn't say how long it was between that and then when he got the phone call from Vince.
Yeah, well,
you could probably piece it together.
Because he said it was before. He said, we wouldn't have anything for you until maybe after Mania.
Okay.
And then he said something, and this was a few months before that even. So that would have been Mania 1990.
Yeah.
Which is Mania
so it was like 6 months.
6.
Yeah, if it
6
was
months before that.
If it was like
November
March
prior.
Yeah.
So maybe it took him about a whole year to finally get in there, and then they talk about the call. Stone Cold related to his own story about being called, and Vince telling him that he's going to be the ringmaster with DiBiase, and Stone Cold said, like, terrible gimmick, but my foot's in the door, so I got a mortgage, I got a family, I got to take it. Mm-hmm. And Taker's like, yeah, we've heard this story before. His phone rings, he picks it up, and it's Vince. Although he's not sure it's Vince.
I like Vince's Undertaker's Vince impression too, because it's really not on, but it kind of is.
Yeah,
it's decent.
He has the cadence of the speech. Down,
yeah, he does.
But not necessarily the timbre of the voice.
Yeah.
And so he picks up the phone and Vince says, "Is this the Undertaker?"
Yeah. And then he puts the phone right here and he's thinking to himself. He's like, Undertaker. He's, I don't know if somebody's messing with me or not, but if it is Vince, I'll just Undertaker. That could be cool. Okay. Yes, this is the Undertaker.
Can you be up here tomorrow?
Yes, I can.
Good.
Which was cool. And it's like, man, yeah, you immediately think. And then they show up on the big screen. They showed like the initial sort of really cheesy, poorly drawn design of the Undertaker. And it's like, man, you could tell that it was immediately something that he could really sink into because he's a fan of, because he brought up like, the old Westerns when there's a shootout, an Undertaker would come out and measure the bodies for the casket.
Yeah.
And that's a very ominous figure who does that. And I would think that there was just a wave of relief because it's like, holy crap, Undertaker, that's a pretty cool name, But you could tell just through his body language and how he's explaining the story that, he was like, okay, cool, I'm not the Eggman.
Yeah.
This is something I can do. And immediately he started talking about the process of figuring out who the Undertaker was. And that's when he started talking about the in-ring Undertaker and what that would mean and how he had to fight the urge to be the athletic big man.
Yeah, because they showed footage of his debut at Survivor Series 90, and they're talking about how the kids sitting ringside were just scared of him.
Yeah.
Because he was huge.
Yeah.
And scary looking.
They did. I mean, especially for the time, they did such a good job creating a character that just immediately was kind of iconic and resonated. I mean, you look. They had like he was all pale and he had like the dark makeup under his eyes.
Yeah.
But none of it looked cheesy.
No.
It looked really good.
No, he was huge. He was jacked, and he was kind of approaching things different than most wrestlers were at the time. It kind of felt, and part of that was a gimmick because it was over the top, and you could say it was cartoonish, but it was rooted in. It wasn't rooted in fun.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It was rooted in legitimately scaring people. So if he were to go out there and do topes, that's not. It's awesome.
It's rooted in mature content, even because when WWE references content that's like just sort of cool and darker, then it usually goes over pretty well. I mean, granted, if you can take a look right now at The Fiend. And it's like, man, that's actually pretty cool. Like, whether or not they're going to actually handle the character correctly, who knows? But for now, anyways, it's pretty cool. Even when Bray Wyatt first debuted, the cult leader from the swamps or the bayou, wherever he's from, it was just really cool because that obviously had its some roots in some other fiction, and of course, who was the wrestler who did the Bray Wyatt-esque gimmick?
That
before?
was Dan Spivey.
Dan Spivey. That's right.
Waylon Mercy.
Yeah, way to stop wrestling, I guess, all those years ago. That's right.
But Dan Spivey's bringing this whole thread you're talking about full circle.
I know, isn't that crazy?
But that was all inspired by Cape Fear.
By Cape Fear, yeah, exactly, yeah.
So this is when Undertaker started talking about adjusting his style. He brings up Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th.
And they all move slow.
They all move slow, but always they're in the right position. They need to do what they want to do.
To cut your throat.
Yeah. And so he started opting, and you can see that now. We've seen that with Jackson Riker.
Yeah.
before he was given his directive from Triple H apparently to be a Terminator, he seemed kind of lost out there. Mm-hmm. But once you get that through line of who your character is, you base everything else around that one thing.
And that's perfect because that brings us to the moment, the tease in the trailer. And I got the biggest kick out of this and the biggest smile on my face when Austin said, okay, you're in WWF. Who did you go to for advice in developing your character? And Undertaker said, take a guess. And he said, it wasn't Vince. He said, no, it's not Vince, one of the boys. And he said, Jake the Snake. And that so makes all the sense in the world.
Yep.
All the sense in the world.
Yep.
I loved it. I thought that was so good. That was so good. And Austin was like, oh, it was good. And
it made all the sense.
And Austin was such a good interviewer, and he gave Undertaker so much room to just tell the story while Austin sort of drives where they're going. Mm-hmm. I loved it. I thought it was so good. Mm-hmm. Let's see here. What other bits were there? Where did they move on from there? They sort of went to like the American Badass stuff.
Yeah, they didn't cover.
I like this when he talked about Survivor Series match about how inside he was marking out so hardcore about throwing Dusty Rhodes out.
Yeah, and made a point of going up and thanking him afterwards.
Mm-hmm,
yeah, that was cool. They kind of transitioned. They didn't cover a whole lot of ground of that 10 or so years that he was Undertaker. It's more just a process of the creation and the evolution of the style in ring and whatnot. But then they talk American Badass, and Undertaker says, I'm pretty good about figuring out when things are stale. Yeah. And when the audience thinks it's stale, then, maybe I'm a little behind on that realization because I'm so wrapped up in what I'm doing. But nonetheless, he more or less said, I got my finger on the pulse of my character pretty well. Yeah. And he needed to hit the reset button. Yeah. Especially given the times, given the content they were putting out there. He felt like at this point, the Undertaker gimmick, as was constructed, was holding him back. Mm-hmm. And
Vince agreed with him.
Yeah, and we'd heard before on Something to Wrestle With that him becoming the American Badass allowed him, because we'd heard before about, and they brought up in here about how the boys would react when he wouldn't sell for them, because he's like an undead mortician. Of course, he's not going to sell. Yeah, but giving himself the creative freedom to be a human again as a character made him more vulnerable. Yeah, and allowed him to do a lot more stuff. So when he came back around to the Dead Man gimmick, it was like an amalgam of all the various iterations of Undertakers, and then we got the matches with HBK and Triple H. Whereas before, he couldn't be that vulnerable in the ring. Yeah. It allowed him opportunity to grow as a performer.
Yeah. And what was also really interesting is they actually showed the footage of his debut as the American Badass. He'd been gone for 9 months. First, he had a groin injury, and then like 3 months or 3 weeks before he was supposed to come back, he got a pec injury. And they showed it back. And they stopped, and Austin said, is this all adrenaline right here? And he was like, oh, yeah. He was like, because you have no idea. That's so interesting. You have this character you've been doing for 10 years, and you're going to debut something brand new. Of course, it's going to feel like a risk. When we're watching it, I remember watching it and just thinking to myself, this is really cool. Yeah. Like, it's Undertaker, he's on a bike. Yeah. This is like badass. Like, this is badass. Yeah. Because the Undertaker, unless you put him in like a doink costume, he's not gonna look like he's not a badass. He's always gonna look like a badass. But for him to admit that it's like, man, this might be a fart. Yeah. This might not work. Yeah. Is really interesting stuff. And he goes out there, and my favorite part, maybe my favorite part of the whole thing, was Austin commentating over American Badass's debut. Oh, yeah. Because what were they calling it? Posting? Posting. Yeah. When he gets him up there.
Yeah, because I think that's when he said, Taker says, oh, Triple H, he posted here. And I think it's when he held himself up on the choke slam.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. He's posting. Yeah. Oh, he's posting. And then Stephanie comes up and she hits Undertaker from behind. And it's like, oh, I love her.
Yeah, they're putting her over.
They're putting her over big time. And then Vince comes down and Austin just starts cracking up when Vince is down there. He's having the best time watching this stuff. He's like, oh, of course, Vince. Yeah. Oh man, it was really, really good stuff. But no, that was interesting that they're like, hey, this is such a wide deviation from what he was doing. They have no idea if it's going to work. But you see the crowd's going apeshit over bananas, it. Yeah, they were loving it every second of it.
Yeah, yeah. And they kind of talked about how Big Evil was kind of starting the route back to Dead Man in terms of the character aspect of it. And then, he comes back, in 2009? then so WrestleMania 20 he came back. So I guess it'd be 2005. He had that match against Kane. His return to Deadman Undertaker.
2021 was 2005.
Well, it was WrestleMania 20, so 2004.
2004. Yeah, that was 2004.
Yeah, 2004.
Yeah, because I went to 21.
Yeah,
I think.
he came back as Deadman Undertaker to have that match against Kane. And they talk about, his matches against Shawn Michaels, and he kind of talks about how the second version of Deadman Undertaker was the one that he can actually kind of work in all the various things and actually wrestle a bit more athletically.
Yeah.
And then we get to see a lot, his 2 legendary matches against HBK at consecutive WrestleManias, and then following that 2 really awesome matches, including one of my favorite matches ever, the end of the era match.
Me too, yeah.
Against Triple H.
Sure. Yeah, and they showed they showed a bunch of clips, and then Austin, he brought up the picture of them doing their own sort of encore, I guess. Or
that was a
own.
shoot.
Yeah, and he says, that wasn't planned. We just did it because it felt right.
Yeah.
And, he was like, it was like a band in an encore, I guess, if you're doing a Broadway stage play or whatever.
Yeah.
When they do
your bow, your final
your final. Yeah, exactly.
And that's kind of like when the retirement talk. We'll get to some of the road hijinks in a little bit. The retirement talk kind of comes in because he says, "You look in my eyes, that's the look of somebody who's kind of thinking, all right, this could be it." But of course, it wasn't. He had subsequent matches. They talk about the match against Brock, and he's saying how badly that match messed up his confidence. Not so much that it was a stinker. You can't really blame him for that match not being great because he couldn't remember where he was.
Yeah,
like
said he didn't. His last memory or his memory going into that match ended at 3:30 in the afternoon, and he was like, there was a whole process of going to doctors, stretching. There's a whole hour and a half long process that leads into the match. He says, I don't remember any of that stuff at all. He says, I remember a conversation with my wife around 3:30, and that's when it goes dark. And then after that, I remember waking up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning at the hospital.
And then people asking him, do you know where you are? Do you know your name? Do you know your birthday? He didn't. He didn't know the answer to any of those questions.
Yeah.
The only thing he remembered was Michelle's name.
Yeah.
That was it.
Michelle!
So
I remember her. That's it.
He got his bell rung pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
But it's fascinating to hear him talk about how he didn't know when it happened. And it seems to be a constant give and take with him because they talk WrestleMania 33, the match against Reigns, and he was under the assumption that was it.
It was done, yeah.
And he said he's cognizant of not wanting to be a parody of himself. He doesn't want to go out there and do it if he doesn't think he could put forth the performance. And it's been an uneven track record, even going back as far as WrestleMania 30 because he's put on good matches. That Hell in a Cell match against Brock was great.
Yeah.
Their SummerSlam bout, I think it was pretty good.
Yeah, his series with Brock was pretty good.
His match against CM Punk was good. He's had some, that's before 30, but his match against Bray at 31, not that great.
Yeah.
Match against Roman, he was trying.
Yeah.
He just couldn't perform at the level physically that he was used to.
It definitely put a different perspective on, we always talk about, the Undertaker, really, they're going to wheel him out. When you see somebody at their most human, it definitely puts a different light on that. It forces you to remember, oh yeah, this person. The thing that struck me the most with that line of questioning was just he's always trying. It's for him. It's simply a personal challenge. I mean, I'm sure the money is great too, but for him, it's a personal challenge to see if he can get to the place physically and mentally where he can put on a match that people would expect a certain level of performance. And also he said the phrase, I'm going to write my own destiny several times. And that's what he seems to be doing at this point. He says, whether it's a favor if Vince calls me up for a favor or, if he just if he's just geeked enough to do it again.
Yeah.
It's up to him to decide and nobody else.
Yeah.
And that's totally true.
Yeah. I mean, at this point in his career, he's earned the equity to make that decision, I suppose. And he said, if Triple H or HBK or even Austin himself came up to him, he's like, hey, man, you sure you can keep doing this at this rate? He'd have to consider it.
Yeah.
But rank and file people like us, if we go on Twitter, go to Q&A, it's like, hey, when do you think you should be retiring? He's not going to listen to us.
Right, yeah. Nor should he. Yeah,
that's his decision to make. Yeah. And that match against Goldberg was not good. It was awful. But he came right back Extreme Rules and put on a fun match.
Yeah, yeah.
A fun match.
Yeah.
So if his body is feeling good, he's motivated, and he's in it and doing it for the right reason, there's a right opponent across the ring from him, why not?
Yeah. Yeah, he's still a
if
huge
he still
name.
has something to bring, and he's still a huge name. He still has something to bring and something to offer. I guess why not?
Yeah. I mean, we can say, maybe the Brock thing should have been it, or maybe the Roman Reigns thing should have been it. But, if it's still...
It's his career at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and he just kind of says he takes every match at a time. Mm-hmm. Every return is a one-time deal.
Yeah.
So it seems to be a situation where he doesn't seem like the type of guy who's gonna come out in Raw and have the huge speech.
Yeah.
Vince might twist his arm to make that happen.
Well, no, he even said that. He said that putting down his
Perfect way to
hat
do it.
and his jacket in the middle of the ring at the one that we went to was the way to do it. With 2017 was the way to do it. He's like, this is much better than coming out and doing a speech.
Yep. And he said people would understand what all that meant. Mm-hmm. However, he said he got talked into coming back.
Yeah.
For that squash match against John Cena the following Mania. And that kind of was the summation of his in-ring career for the most part. And then we got some behind the scenes stuff.
One of the other interesting things that I wish that Austin would have dived into a little bit more was Taker saying that he basically lived the gimmick.
Yeah.
For like that first 10 years or first 5 or 6 years or whatever.
His closet is all just black clothes.
Which is such an interesting concept to me because he seems on this show anyways to be a very different person than the dead man.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I wonder, if that played into his personal life at all.
Yeah, I know. If there was this happened to actors.
That affected relationships.
Yeah, if there's a blurring of if he kind of lost who Mark Calloway was, if he was Undertaker 24/7.
Yeah, it's one thing to dive into a character for a movie and you're gone for 10 weeks to,
4 months maybe.
It's a Kubrick movie, 6 months, 8 months,
maybe.
or whatever. But like it's a different thing to live that 5 or 6 years.
Depends too if he was method in it, because then he might have got lost. Or if he's like a classical thing where he puts on those clothes and then publicly when he's out and about he's Undertaker and not Mark Calloway.
Yeah.
When he returns home, he can take that uniform off,
walk around naked and be Mark Calloway.
Put on his Zubaz pants and tank top.
Yeah.
And then he's Mark.
Yeah.
I guess it kind of depends on his approach. If his approach
what he meant by I lived the gimmick.
Yeah.
Yeah. If he meant strictly in public. Or which is still a really difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
That can't be easy.
But those are different times too, man. Yeah. Kayfabe's still going strong.
Well, yeah. I mean, he was even talking about God, I forget who is it. He was talking about hitting the road with, and then all of a sudden they found out that he was going to be working heel against Babyface.
It was Stone Cold. Stone Cold was trying to arrange a ride for one of the Memphis shows, and then they found out that Undertaker was going to work heel.
Yeah,
and then
that's
Taker
right,
called and said, "Sorry, we can't ride to the show together
right,
because you can't show up in the car."
Oh, that's right. Then Austin said,
on.
"Okay, I'll stretch you down the line or something like that."
Yeah, and Taker was put off by that, and then he was the one that stretched Austin.
Oh yeah,
and Austin's like, it didn't hurt. I just couldn't do anything.
That to me is one of the trippier aspects of wrestling. Is that you can run into somebody on the indie scene early in your career, or in their case in one of the territories, and you have no idea if this person is going to end up done with the business in a year, or if they're going to end up languishing as a jobber maybe for 30 years, or if they're going to be selling out Madison Square Garden with you and WrestleManias with you. 10 years from then, or even in their case, like 5 years from then.
Yeah.
That is a really interesting thing. It's like, oh, this punk kid, I'm going to stretch him, but then he's going to be the biggest name in pro wrestling 5 years down
They kind of wrapped that up at the end of the show, too, where they said, who'd have thought that the two of us would be in the studio doing this, 30 years down the line.
Yeah.
And it's pretty crazy that, and that's not a thing exclusive to wrestling. You think of maybe some actors or something who do some community theater, and then 15 years later they're like, "Hey, we're at the Oscars together."
Yeah. Same thing. I mean, basketball. They got the high school. The AAU stuff,
and So it's pretty interesting. All right, let's talk road stories. Mm-hmm. They talked about that famous picture of Taker. Hall Nash
right before they left.
Triple H, HBK, X-Pac, all sitting around, and Taker actually supplied some context and saying, that was right before they jumped ship to WCW.
Yeah, and then WCW started kicking our asses in the ratings.
Yeah. He told a story about partying with Cypress Hill and out partying everybody.
Yeah.
They're in the midst of an extended, he thought like a 17-day tour somewhere overseas, and he was like, all right, I've been going hard for a lot of days. I'm going to take the night off. Just go down to the hotel bar, have a drink with the guys, go to bed. Cypress Hill's there. they'd say, "Well, we hear that you're a pretty legendary partier," and then I don't think he exactly said what was said, but someone said something to him that essentially challenged him.
Yeah.
And he's like, "All right, let's do it then."
Yeah, I love the way his face changed too to like, oh, okay, because he was like, yeah, they're just being kind of disrespectful about it, and so, and I mean, long story short, and it was kind of a long story. He basically was last man standing in like an all-night rager with Cypress Hill.
Yeah,
just bodies everywhere.
Yeah,
and X-Pac sleeping on his shoulder.
Yeah, and he wakes up and goes, "All right, Sean, I think we're done here."
Yeah,
goes back to his room and said he had like an early. It was like 4 a.m, I think he said, when they got back or something like that. And he had an early morning call, so he got up and he said it sucked.
His head felt like crap. It was
miserable.
throbbing. He was miserable. But he goes down there, and everybody else looks like they're dead.
Or still sleeping in.
Oh, yeah. And so he completely no-sells it all. And he's like, oh, hey, how's it going, guys? You guys doing good? Yeah. That was awesome.
That was pretty funny.
That was good stuff. I loved the bit. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say when they moved on to people trying to break.
Yeah, that's what I was going to go to.
Okay, good.
I'm kind of disappointed they didn't mention that bit where I've seen on, I think it was at a house show where he's running up and down, or running the apron, spitting water and stuff, and slamming the water ball into the turnbuckle. I'm really kind of disappointed they didn't bring that up. But they bring up instances. And some of this stuff sounds funny. There's one that like the chain of headlocks and
which is stuff you see in PWG. That's what I thought when
I know, and that stuff they do at house shows where I think this was one of them was a shows overseas where I think Austin said it was it was a bot show.
Yeah, they went to they were like, oh, this is great. It's going to be we're going to a baseball stadium, holds 40,000, and like 800 people show up. So there's a lot of gaga going on.
Yeah,
which is goofing around, I guess.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like when they do like an endless headlock thing where there's like
great.
8 guys. And then, like, the last guy that isn't in the headlock is Aldo Montoya.
Yeah,
who's,
just
incredible. And he says, go to the front of the line. You get
in here. Get in here. Yeah.
And you could be the king of the mountain. You could be top of the world.
He goes
and
back.
Instead, he goes to the back of the line and puts his head in the last guy in the headlock.
Yeah, that's funny.
That was good. And then they had like the feats of strength where everybody. And when Undertaker does this, the only person to sell it is the guy across from him, who's Austin, and then everybody else sells
it. That's pretty damn funny.
That was hilarious. I love the video clip they showed of JBL. Running down Undertaker,
trying to make him break,
trying to make him break, and they cut to that shot of Undertaker's face in a close-up, and he's just trying his damnedest not to laugh.
I know.
That's the best thing.
And then the kind of final bit on trying to break the Undertaker was Taker Rooney, and Vince even coming out there trying to convince him to do it. It was great.
Boy, that was good stuff.
Great.
Yeah.
All in all, really great. Taking the curtain back, totally informative. Humanizing the Undertaker, all the stuff we'd hoped for and more. I mean, if you're familiar with Stone Cold's podcast, he's been doing for years. This isn't a huge departure from that.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Because he's always in those episodes breaking things down. Not just how'd you get in the business, breaking things down from a character and in-ring standpoint. Because he seems to be a real student of the game in terms of how people develop their character, how that translates in ring, and translates to how you approach the stories you want to tell.
Yeah.
He's the best in terms of. I kind of feel like in terms of the best interviewer of wrestlers, in terms of picking apart the art of and science of pro wrestling, Stone Cold is tops.
I agree totally. I never would have thought that he'd be this valuable a resource for people who are just interested in pro wrestling. But my God, he's so good. He's so good. And it even got like a little bit. I didn't cry or anything, but like towards the end, you can tell that Stone Cold was sort of like. He was getting a little emotional. There's a bit of No Country for Old Men type stuff going on. They took like another shot and sort of said their farewells. Yeah. But and then Austin at one point like apologized for like ripping Undertaker's ear.
Yeah, almost ripping his ear off. Yeah.
Towards the end, it felt like Undertaker was just trying to hold on a little bit longer. He didn't want to end things.
I know.
Because he was having such a good time, and these guys are old and they've done so much together. I can't imagine what that bond is like.
Yeah, I know. And Stone Cold kind of prefaces the interview saying, "I've known you for a long time, but I don't know you that well."
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I imagine that probably happens a lot.
There's a lot of similarities between them. Like they're from the same kind of neck of the woods. You know?
Totally. They graduated from high school the same year. But he said, Undertaker, you had your friends, you had your crew of people that you hung out with.
Bone Street Crew.
Yeah, and Stone Cold said, I just kind of kept to myself. So while there's pictures all over the place of them hanging out backstage. There's the famous one is everybody. Stone Cold brought up one of just the two of them hanging out in Kuwait or something like that.
Yeah. Look, I got the double earrings going.
Yeah. We said I got to have that 80s wrestling neck to hold that chain on there or something like that.
Yeah.
and it's just interesting to see these guys who've known each other for 30 years get to know each other.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's an interesting dynamic. It's pretty cool.
I know, man. I wouldn't mind hearing like just them start a podcast of their own.
I
You know? I mean,
I
how
know.
great would that be? But I would hope that Undertaker would seriously consider Dead Man Talking.
I know.
And I'll be honest, like I know that he was supposed to do a StarCast thing, and then that got pulled out because of Undertaker signed the new Legends deal with WWE or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, I kind of feel like this was a better venue. I
Yeah.
really do like him and Austin.
Unless they're going to have Conrad interview Taker at StarCast.
Yeah, that would have been good. Don't get me wrong, that would have been good. But man, Austin.
But I think it would have been Conrad would have taken a different approach. It would have. I don't know if it would have been as nuts and bolts behind the scenes as a wrestler.
Yeah.
How did this come to happen?
Austin, I think also there has to be a certain level of comfortability. And I'm not saying that Conrad seemed like a very comfortable person talking to anybody. But the fact that they have that bond, Austin can relate, and there is zero idea that there was anything off limits.
Yeah.
And really, in the end, that's what you want. You want it to be completely everything is on the table to talk about. And if you have the added bonus of Austin, who understands what it is to be in the position that Taker was in, he is uniquely qualified to be asking the questions.
Well, and also he's capable in an economy of language of asking questions that gets to the heart of the matter in pure wrestling terms.
And there's always the trust between the guys who have both, there's the wrestlers bond or whatever, the brotherhood. And I think that Taker probably just would have opened up more with Stone Cold than anybody else.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. I think in terms of peeking behind the curtain and learning about The Undertaker, I think this is probably the way to go more than anything else. So that's cool. Anyways, let us know what you guys thought about Broken Skull Sessions in the comments below.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for watching. We'll be back with the live show tomorrow. Till next time, we'll talk to you later.
Goodbye.